My name is Karen Amram, and I am the chair of the High Level Forum. It is a great honor for me to open this webinar. Like I said last week when we held our Connect briefing on the issue of managing talent, today's topic was already discussed at the 2021 HLF Summit in Grenoble. Given the success of this previous workshop, we decided to maintain our exploration on how international collaborations are key to solving the supply chain issue. This step today is very important towards the HLF November Summit, as it allows us to establish a first concrete list of initiatives by 4 internationally renowned innovation ecosystems. These efforts are examples that we wish not only to bring to your attention, but also to challenge and enrich. I have to say, I am delighted to see that HLF Connect, whose seed germinated in 2020 with the desire to increase interaction between ecosystems, continues to flourish. I'd like to thank the representatives of the ecosystem who've put together specific elements for this roundtable. I would also like to thank all the contributors who are not here today, but who have also provided useful input. And finally, I would like to warmly thank Professor Richard Dasher, Director of the USA Jet Technology Management Center at Stanford University, and also leader of this working group since its inception. Richard, to make a link between the issue of talent that we discussed last week and today's webinar, you wrote, if your workforce problems don't get you, your supply chain will. How to get out of it? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I'm delighted to be able to moderate this session where we're going to give some interesting examples of how people are using international collaborations to orient their supply chains toward the 2030 goals, the green goals of the SDGs. Let me see. If I could have the next slide, that would be great. So this is part of our project this year, which we really have been working on for about 8 months now. And our project is looking
So I'm afraid we just lost Richard and his signal. I guess he's trying to be back. Julien, Emma, do you have any news? Okay, maybe he's here. Oh, Richard, welcome back, Richard. So maybe you can start at the beginning.
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning again. I apologize for internet problem. In any case, we have a working group of ecosystems in the High Level Forum that's been looking at supply chain issues. We've looked at the shift from efficiency to resilience. And this year, we're looking at the orientation of supply chains toward meeting the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And what we would like to do that's kind of new this year is really look at some example case studies in depth that will be useful to any ecosystem. not just to say what's happening in our own ecosystem, but to really focus on what are features that we might learn from each other in regard to managing supply chains. So we want to come up with best practices, solutions to challenges, recognizing the very large differences there are in the structure and also dynamics across ecosystems that are focused on innovation in the world. So today, we're very happy to start by introducing 4 examples of international scale collaborations in supply chains. All are aimed at greener supply chains. The first stage in preparing for another session on this topic that will be more in-depth with more data at the High Level Forum Summit this November in Tampere, Finland, which will be in person. So for now, from now, we'll study these examples in more detail. And I'd also like to encourage anyone in the audience to submit an example to us of an international supply chain collaboration that is forward-looking, innovative, and that is aimed at something about the SDG goals, whether it's decarbonization or whether it's improving the kind of recycling capacity of a supply chain or whatever. So today, our examples are going to come from Edmonton, from Bangkok, from Hsinchu, and from Silicon Valley. And I'm very delighted to be able to introduce our speakers, Mr. Brent Lakeman, who is the director of the Hydrogen Initiative at Edmonton Global, and then Janakrishna Kanatharana, who is executive vice president of Thailand's National Science and Technology Development Agency, Stephen Su, who is the Senior Vice President and General Director of Taiwan's Industrial Technology Research Institute, and myself. And we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the everyone chat. I look forward to hearing from you. So let's go with our first speaker. Brent, I think the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Richard. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Brent Lakeman. As Richard mentioned, I'm the director for the Hydrogen Initiative over at Edmonton Global. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that Edmonton is the traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. So thank you again for the opportunity to present on this panel. The topic nicely aligns with Edmonton Global's focus on hydrogen, since I was able to present last year at the June High Level Forum Connect briefing and at the annual summit in Grenoble. Since November, our region has been very active to advance our efforts around the energy transition and our hydrogen hub, which seeks to leverage our position as a low-cost supplier of low-carbon hydrogen to build a strong value chain. The topic of greening supply chains through international collaborations speaks to some major announcements made this spring at the first ever Canadian Hydrogen Convention that was held in Edmonton that did attract over 4,000 attendees, including leaders from over 20 countries. What I'd like to highlight on today's Connect briefing is how our Edmonton International Airport is working to green its own supply chains through international collaborations. And while our airport is certainly not alone in taking action to green its operations, it has been a leader in pursuing a wide range of international collaborations to position Edmonton as the center of a growing North American transportation and logistics hub, not only impacting its own net zero commitments, but the commitments of others. So just to remind everyone about the key partners in this case study, my organization, Edmonton Global, is the economic development agency for the metropolitan Edmonton region. We're the 5th largest region in Canada and one of the fastest growing in terms of population and its economy. We work on behalf of our 14 member municipalities to radically transform the economy of the region. we've identified a set of transformational opportunities, one of which is the future hydrogen economy that we're placing a concerted focus on. One of our other focus areas, though, is transportation and logistics, which recognizes Edmonton's role as a strategic North American and global hub and a key role in global supply chains. Edmonton Global works closely with other partners within our region, including the Edmonton International Airport, our municipalities, and the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub. Edmonton Global is also a partner in Port Alberta, which is the regional inland port where air, rail, pipelines, roadways converge with favorable regulations and incentives to create a regional manufacturing, cargo, and logistics hub. Port Alberta unites infrastructure and logistics efficiencies to support inbound and outbound cargo with the specific advantages of a foreign trade zone designation. Our partner, the Edmonton International Airport, has been a Canadian leader in advancing innovative approaches within the aviation sector. The airport has the largest geographic footprint in Canada, with access to over 7,000 acres of land. It has been a living lab for testing, trialing, incubating, and commercializing technologies, including a focus on autonomous systems. And the airport has played a key role in driving our region's economic prosperity through aviation and commercial development. Like Edmonton Global, the airport is a key partner in Port Alberta. With our location on the Great Circle route, the airport is situated as a geographic nexus of air travel to and from Asia and the east coast of the United States, as well as Europe and the Middle East. The Airport City Sustainability Campus is an integrated ecosystem to attract investment and promote trade while creating positive economic impact and jobs for the Edmonton region. One of the key differentiators at the airport is its 2021 commitment toward carbon neutrality by 2040. In 2021, it was the only airport to have signed on to the Climate Pledge. The Climate Pledge is an international initiative for organizations and corporations who are committed to meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement on climate 10 years ahead of schedule. It was founded by Amazon and the environmental organization Global Optimism in 2019. As part of the Climate Pledge, EIA, or the Edmonton International Airport, is committing to three principal areas of action: regular reporting, carbon elimination by implementing its decarbonization strategies in line with the Paris Agreement through real business changes and innovations, including efficiency improvements, renewable energy, materials reductions, and other carbon emission elimination strategies, and through credible offsets. One of the core values for Edmonton International Airport is to be dedicated to sustainability. And to reflect this value, airport leadership recognized the need to find other leaders the airport could partner with to identify opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and introduce sustainable innovation in this sector. As an international gateway, Edmonton International Airport identified the Climate Pledge as a global network of organizations that share its values and actively sought to join this movement. The other key partner in this case study is JOIN, the Japanese Overseas Infrastructure Investment Corporation for Transport and Urban Development, headquartered in Tokyo. JOIN is a Japanese government private public infrastructure investment fund company established in Japan in October 2014. And it's a new form of infrastructure investment fund that supports Japanese companies engaging in overseas infrastructure projects through the utilization of Japanese knowledge, technology, and experience acquired over the long history of their business. JOIN's aim is to encourage Japanese companies to utilize their accumulated knowledge, technology, and experience in the field of infrastructure to expand overseas. JOIN's approach is to make contributions that will lead to mutual economic growth for both Japan and host countries. JOIN has placed a strong focus on supporting Japan's energy transition and connecting with other countries like Canada that can play a key role in supporting Japan's energy transition. The partnership between JOIN and the Edmonton International Airport started in 2021, shortly after the airport's commitment to the Climate Pledge and its carbon neutrality commitment. With the support of the Provincial Investment Attraction Agency, Invest Alberta, the airport and JOIN partnered with NTT, the Japanese telecommunications leader, to take on an on-demand transportation services pilot. The pilot leveraged the smart solutions technology developed by NTT and applied it within the airport campus environment. The initial phase placed a focus on on-demand ride-hailing, flexible bus routing, scheduling, and occupancy. While the pilot wasn't directly focused on hydrogen technologies, it played an important role in helping to build the relationship between Join and the airport and demonstrated a working model for collaborating with international technology partners like NTT and investors like Join. Now let's shift to the airport's plan for net zero and carbon neutrality. A holistic, multifaceted approach is necessary that doesn't just look at the EIA's own operations, but its overall impact on emissions. Hydrogen was identified early on as an energy carrier that would be essential for helping the airport meet its targets. The nature of the fleets and the airport's northern geography make the use of hydrogen critical for airport fleets and ground transportation. We also know from the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub that our heavy-duty transportation sector is seriously exploring hydrogen fuel cells and hydrogen dual-fuel vehicles, as battery electric will not be suitable for our region for its economy and its climate. The airport also sits on key corridors that connect the cities of Edmonton and Calgary, which is used by over 20,000 Class 8 heavy-duty trucks. Hydrogen is also being considered for heat and power applications, other local industries setting up adjacent to the airport within the region's transportation and logistics hub, and most importantly, sustainable aviation fuels that will be needed for the aviation sector to also meet its own net zero targets. The airport's hydrogen hub is also nicely aligned with the EIA's, or the Edmonton International Airport City Solar Initiative, that will dramatically transform the west side of our lands, create jobs, and bring the potential new power source for airport operations and the Edmonton metro region. An agreement with Europe-based Alpine Sun will see the company develop a 627-acre, 120-megawatt solar farm, and all available information shows this will be the largest development of its kind at an airport anywhere in the world. This new solar farm reflects the airport's ongoing commitment to economic development and diversification, along with its core value of being dedicated to sustainability. The airport, similar to seaports like Rotterdam, Liverpool, Los Angeles, offer a unique environment to accelerate the use of hydrogen within a somewhat contained environment, positioning it as an early leader in helping to develop the demand, the infrastructure, and the experience that will be needed for more widespread adoption. So 2 months ago at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention in Edmonton, the airport announced a comprehensive portfolio of new partnership initiatives to make the airport hydrogen hub real. The initiatives start with the commitment to continue working with Join to promote investment in the airport's sustainability campus and hydrogen hub. This reflects a long-term commitment to work with Join on integrating advanced technologies into the sustainability campus. Similar to the experience with NTT, it brings global expertise from companies that are not just headquartered in Japan, but companies with deep networks to research centers from across the globe, such as NTT's Silicon Valley team. Other partnerships include a commitment from Toyota to launch hydrogen fuel cell vehicles as part of the airport taxi, rental, and rideshare fleets. It includes bringing First Element Fuel, a global leader in hydrogen refueling station technologies, to Edmonton, leveraging its recent experience in the California market. And the airport and Mitsui and Company have made a commitment to work together to decarbonize transportation systems by testing and piloting new green technologies within the airports within Edmonton International Airport's environment. An example of the Mitsui partnership is reflected in Latenda, which is a Quebec-based bus manufacturer, which is financially backed by Mitsui, which is looking to launch its first hydrogen buses at the airport and also expand its manufacturing, assembly, and maintenance within the Edmonton region, ultimately building its hydrogen center of excellence here. There are many other initiatives that were announced in April, but I'll highlight one last one, which is a commitment to work with Hydra Energy, a BC-based clean tech company with a unique technology and business model for converting existing Class 8 diesel-consuming trucks to also use hydrogen within a dual-fuel system. The airport has also partnered with this Canadian company to help green its own fleet vehicles, but also those of companies operating out of the airport. These are just a few of the partnerships that the Edmonton International Airport has established to green its operations and the supply chains within the airport environment. So at a higher level, what's been accomplished here, some of the initial infrastructure, such as refueling stations that will serve not just the airport, but which will be available for other users of hydrogen fuel cell and dual fuel vehicles, moving along one of Canada's key transportation and logistics corridors. The airport's partnerships are establishing a long-term commitment from global leaders like Mitsui, Toyota, First Element to our region, positioning the airport hub as the sandbox for the development of next-generation technologies. The partnerships provide value-added opportunities for the region, supporting new long-term goals of economic diversification. For example, we expect to see new opportunities around manufacturing, maintenance, and integration. And similarly, the airport provides a unique framework for pursuing innovative approaches to the hydrogen economy that will be of use to other sectors beyond aviation. For example, the partnership with Hydra to advance dual fuel technologies reflects not just technological innovation, but business innovation that will be important for accelerating hydrogen demand across our region and ultimately across North America. More on this in a moment. And finally, the airport's playing a key role in advancing awareness around the hydrogen opportunity. For example, airport taxi fleets provide an opportunity for the public to get a real-world look at hydrogen passenger vehicles, similar to the experience with vehicles like the Toyota Prius 20 years ago. So the airport, to put the airport hub in the context of our broader regional aspirations, we can see that the airport's initial partnerships will make inroads to the hub's goals that have been reflected in what we call the base case developed last summer. The base case calls for the introduction of 5,000 hydrogen fuel cell trucks, like the Hyzon trucks shown here in the picture, in the Edmonton region by 2032, and more importantly, 15,000 dual fuel trucks. The airport's pilots on dual fuel will demonstrate to the region's trucking sector the opportunities to accelerate hydrogen deployment through conversion of existing trucks to use hydrogen. And we'll see some of the initial hydrogen fueling stations developed at the airport. Those will help kickstart the 60+ stations that will be needed by 2032. I don't, just for the interest of time, I'll skip over this slide, but really just to show this all came about really quickly just over the past year. And, this is really because of the commitment from the players involved, like the Edmonton International Airport, the support they've been receiving from the federal government, their main regulator, as well as others. And really what they're trying to do is help break the chicken and egg analogy around hydrogen use and hydrogen infrastructure. So, they can certainly become the beachhead for the rollout of hydrogen across our regional economy. And just lastly, I think that we all recognize the value of global partnerships for advancing and accelerating our strategic priorities. This case study confirms that a commitment to international partnerships helps to, one, provide leading expertise, starting with organizations like NTT for its globally recognized expertise for on-demand transportation services. The collaborations have resulted in further connections with our own leaders in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, as we focus on the hydrogen opportunities, we're proud to have access to leaders at Mitsui, Toyota, First Element, as we work to advance our hydrogen economy. JOIN is established to facilitate access to capital for critical infrastructure investments that will benefit both countries. Ultimately, as we look to link our economies to provide hydrogen to the Japanese market, this expertise will be of critical value. Understanding market needs allow for a deepening understanding of the Japanese markets, and similarly, Japanese understanding of the Canadian market. These partnerships will be important as we pursue the hydrogen economy. We're interested in learning from our experience around the LNG opportunity and how we can start the conversation with key markets earlier in the process. Ultimately, this is about using partnerships to accelerate the transformation to the net zero economy. And we cannot do this by acting in isolation, but with partnerships that can help us scale quickly. Thank you for the opportunity to present this case study at today's session. I look forward to your questions a bit later.
Thank you very much, Brent. And we will have a little bit of discussion at the end of today's session. I have one kind of follow-up question for you, Brent, before we move on. So Edmonton is, or the Alberta region, is looking to be a producer of hydrogen. Is that the role of production and transport in this? This is actually how you all will be contributing that to the world, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly are already Canada's leading producer of hydrogen, and more of that is becoming low carbon hydrogen. But now we need to build demand. So this is really how do we move in tandem by, leveraging our ability to produce it to grow out some of those key demand sectors like the airport environment that will just accelerate more use within our region and beyond our region.
Okay, and I'm curious, how were you able to go so quickly in establishing this relationship on this kind of a scale? That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I really have to give the credit to our partners at the Edmonton International Airport and the JOIN organization and some of their other industry partners. I think maybe a bit of a perfect storm, but again, I think our airport with its size and scale has been somewhat nimble in being able to move very quickly and maybe avoid some of the the bureaucracy that we see in other organizations as they try and move forward on these types of initiatives. But of course, the proof's in the pudding, and we'll have to we'll see what actions get move from these early commitments to very specific actions, and that's what we'd like to keep reporting on over the next year or so.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll come back to this at the end of the session today, but first I'd like to ask for our second speaker to present about the situation in the Eastern Economic Corridor for Innovation in the region of Bangkok. Janakrishna Kanatharana, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Richard, and hello from Thailand, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all speakers and participants. My talk today will focus on an example from Thailand on the partnership with our Belgian counterpart in the development of a joint venture company called Bio-Based Asia Pilot Plant at the Eastern Economic Corridors of Innovation, or EECI. This is to support the development of biorefinery industry in Thailand. First, let me quickly mention that biorefinery is a technology involved using chemical process, bioprocess, and biochemical process to enable biomass conversion to energy, chemicals, and biomaterials, and significantly enhance the values of crops and their byproducts. In Thailand, we believe that we have a high potential in biorefinery industry. This is due to the fact that we have rich biodiversity and good catalog of them. We also produce a large quantities of biomass that a large chunk of it is still underutilized. At the current, we are the ASEAN petrochemical hub, so we have the availabilities of knowledge and skill in the chemical process, and we are already set our foot on the early entrance of the biorefinery industries, and currently we are one of the leading producers of biofuels. On the lookout, we have enthusiasm and commitment from all sectors. The government has issued a number of policies and initiatives that support the development of biorefinery industries, whereas the industry is investing into higher value biochemical production facilities, as well as forming industry-led consortiums to support further research and industrial development. Research institutes and universities also enlarging their portfolios of research and research infrastructures to support local technology development and international technology localization. Biorefinery is also one of the target industries at the Eastern Economic Corridors of Innovation. EECI is set up to be an innovation hub connecting research and investment across Thailand, with the focus on three key activities. First and foremost is adding values to the agricultural sectors, which is the country's backbone. And second, we are facilitating digital transformations of existing industries. And third, we support the development of new industry of interest. And in order to deliver our mission, we strategically invest in scale-up infrastructures such as pilot plants, test beds, sandboxes to support local technology scale-up and international technology localization. Along with other infrastructures, the government decided to invest in biorefinery pilot plants at EECI to support scaling up and localization of technologies that convert agricultural produce and agro waste into food supplements, nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals, as well as biochemicals and bio-based materials. The pilot plants are conceptualized as multi-purpose facilities, meaning that they can support multiple raw materials, multiple processes, and multiple output. And they are to be based on generic design so that we will have freedom to operate afterward. We also want to invite proprietary technology providers to locate their showcases, their technologies in the same areas so that our customers can also try out the proprietary equipment easily. The concept, although it seems very good, we realized right away that we do not have the knowledge nor the know-how in the countries to realize the concept. So we definitely need an international partner to bridge the gaps and accelerate and help us accelerate the developments of the biorefinery pilot plant, as well as the ecosystem around it. And after searching the globe for the right partner, we found our right match in Belgium. Biobased Europe Pilot Plant, a spin-off company from Ghent University, has the experience building up and running biorefinery pilot facilities for over 10 years with similar concept to ours. So after many discussions and chemistry check between both parties, we decided to set up a joint venture company called Biobased Asia Pilot Plant to manage the biorefinery pilot plant at ECI. The official announcement of the company was done to the public at the end of March this year. With the setup of Biobased Asia Pilot Plant as the management company, we can now ensure that our facility will be professionally managed and we can start preparing technology feedstock locally and also internationally with confidence. On the international aspect, among many others, we work with Fraunhofer from Germany with the funding support from BMBF to prepare some of the technologies of interest to be localized in Thailand. In addition, the industry also respond well to the government initiatives, and they set up a consortium called Synbio to link up all players, including Biobased Asia Pilot Plant. Contract Development Manufacturing Organization at the downstream of the EECI biorefinery pilot plant is also being set up by the private sectors. So all these developments will certainly help debut Thailand as the hub of biorefinery in Southeast Asia in the near future. Finally, I would like to end my presentation by reflecting on our learning from setting up the Biobased Asia Pilot Plant joint venture. First, we found that alignment of expectations between the partners are very important. Without that, we could end up fighting rather than collaborating to one another. Second, win-win arrangement and fair play is very important. The partnership would be impossible when one side keep winning at the expense of the other side. And third, forming a partnership is already hard, but making it last is much harder. While our partnership with Biobased Europe Pilot Plant is still only a few years old, the partnership has been put to test on several occasions due partly to the pandemic situation and mainly from the differences in our background and stakeholders that involved. And I dare say that it would not last until this day if we both do not have the willingness to work together and make the partnership last. Finally, I do believe that trust is an important element, and it is something each partner will need to work on it to earn trust from the counterpart. So walk the talk and earn the trust is what we learn as well. Thank you very much. Richard,
Yes,
return the
thank
floor
you
to you.
very much, Jana Krishna. It took a second for me to unmute myself. Uh, those are very interesting, and the lessons that you have drawn from this partnership are incredibly important. What do you think was the most important thing in establishing the trust between the people in Thailand and the people in Belgium, the organizations or the people involved?
Well, I think walk the talk is important. Whatever you promise to your counterpart is something you must deliver and in a timely fashion. And if you have any problem, you need to tell them frankly, and we solve them together.
Okay, and I have one other kind of follow-up question, and that is, what kind of learning can the Thai side expect to get from this project? Will you be able to develop new science in Thailand and also new kind of highly qualified personnel in Thailand through this joint venture?
Definitely, and we also, with the partnership with Biobased Europe pilot plant, who have been in the ecosystem for over 10 years, so they know who have the right technologies that we would need in Thailand to develop the industries. So with the introductions of the right candidate technologies to be localized, that would be very helpful to our industry.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. And we'll come back to the situation with the Biobase Asia pilot plant, when we get into general discussion. Everyone who's on the Zoom, on the meeting, please feel free to send us questions or comments in chat. We're starting to get them coming in, and we'll be delighted to try to address your interests as we go forward in the program. For now, I'd like to turn over the floor to Stephen Su, who is the Senior Vice President and General Director of ITRI, Industrial Technology Research Institute in Taiwan. So, Stephen, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
okay,
sounds
all
good.
right. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining this webinar. And I have a small example to follow, as the title shows, about how to build green supply eco chain. I will explain that a little bit simply: ecosystem plus supply chain for Taiwan's printed circuit board association regarding digital transformation, regarding green transformation. And again, I'm from ITRI, Hsinchu, Taiwan. So just want to set the background for this Taiwan Printed Circuit Association, we call TPCA. In Taiwan, we are big in ICT, but for printed circuit board, they are sort of like a small brother to, for example, semiconductor foundry, IC design, as well as memory, for example. However, that this association consists of more than 700 company members, that with the sheer number, you know that many of them are small and medium size companies, and some are materials, some are equipment providers. But for the main printed circuit boards, we are talking about maybe 20 to 30 companies, and they compete with each other. However, in the history of this association, with whom that ITRI has a long-standing partnership with them, and they are very teamwork oriented when it comes to making recommendation to the government on the future industry policy, or how to catch up, for example, with the 2050 net zero emission compliance. So in the past, that ITRI has been working with them. For example, my organization is mainly on the global market forecast and also a white paper government recommendation. But we have material labs and also green energy lab working with them on hardcore technology improvement. So TPCA, with the challenges about 2050 net zero and with the 2026 CBAM, they have communicated with each other and come up with this vision to build a highly competitive PCB industry with a high added value, environmental protection, and smart manufacturing. The company's members, over 757, and the revenues is as such. And you could see that with the data connection improving from 14% to 48%, obviously they are not really the high tech so to speak, in terms of relative to semiconductor, but they are making their way to improve, for example, the adoption of digital technology, and lastly, but most important, circular economy or the net zero. So just in very last 2 years, following a few years ago, they started talking about circular economy, that their strategy is to get all the help they could to help them achieve high value and also low carbon for building up this green vision or the green supply chain. And as you see that they have, with our help, formulated sort of like a 6 direction for high value and low carbon. So first of all, the manufacturing process will need to be zero carbon. That you understand that their older process many years ago, is filled with chemical hazards. So they have done some type of cleaning and improvement, and now it comes this zero carbon challenge, and again that they are ready to take on this new challenge. And the number 2 is semiconductor network. Every IC needs to mount it on some type of PC board, even though that they are the small brother. But by leveraging the industry clusters of semiconductor in Taiwan, again, that they can piggyback and sort of like advance together with the other industry associations. Intelligent automation, key from Industry 4.0, and they also make some improvement on that. And they realize that I'm going like clockwise. The cultivate talent pool is important to them. Again, being a smaller brother, that they tend to be a little bit more difficult to attract the top talent, but they understand the situation and adjust accordingly. And supply chain autonomy, this is about that there are some upstream materials and equipments that they were getting, from overseas before, and having this COVID experience, and also some of the neighboring competitions, that they realize that they need to have more autonomy in the technology space. And obviously, some of the net zero improvement will be done in the pilot sites before they are rolled out to the real production site. So on the top left, that you could see that in October this year, that they will showcase in their annual exhibition in Taiwan. And the example I want to talk about is that traditionally there are industry problems regarding, for example, effectively reuse the copper sulfur waste liquid is through chemical dosing, which uses smelting chain process that generates high temperature and also introduce some unwanted material transportation that increases the overall carbon footprint. So one company, Waste Recovery Technology from Taiwan, sort of developed their own recovery and treatment equipment. And also their strategy is to have them free with some major PCB factories. And again, that it was piloted in Taiwan first. And they also propose profit sharing agreement between this company and also the PCB customers. And lo and behold, the process worked, and they are successful in achieving their target for circular and economic goals, and also reduce the carbon footprint, which was causing the problem by the traditional recycling process. And obviously in the meantime, because they are working together in the association, they are able to share some common information, but again, still competing with each other on the market side. So with this successful pilot in the Taiwan PCB industry. The words got to their Japanese PCB Industry Association as well, and they invited this company to work with them. And the actual pilot site was actually in Vietnam factory, which was selected as the cooperation location. So after certain setup and testing, and they were able to achieve 1 million tons per month in terms of the recovery of the copper sulfate, and that made this factory the single largest recycling plant in Asia. So to sum up, this PCB or the TPCA association actually relies on their strength by working together, but also working with each for a long time and be able to adapt local solutions and be able to test them in Taiwan first before getting the benefit overseas. And one thing I forgot to mention that for TPCA's global production, about half of them is in Taiwan, and the rest is in China and other overseas market side. So coming back to the title on this page, and I think that TPCA or the PCB Association sets an example for international collaboration for green ecochain, which is like an ecosystem multiplied by the supply chain. Yeah, that's it for my side. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much for this interesting example. I have to ask, in a supply chain like printed circuit board, which is a component of an electronic or system where cost is really hard, you know, maintaining, keeping that, has the capital cost involved in changing around the manufacturing technique or the recycling technique been a major factor in this? How have the companies been able to justify the increased cost of going green?
Yeah, you know, let's say the traditional products using the hard PC board, that is a very low margin business. And some of the competitors, you know, came from China in the past few years. But luckily, the new advanced PC boards, such as the flexibles and also the multi-layers, and now even with the application of 5G. And I think that even though the newer requirements such as the electronic specs as well as the zero carbon become tougher, but the industry in general is able to advance to higher value product. And that's why their vision is calling for high value and low carbon. And they face some of the potential entry even from their customers, you know, doing packaging and doing some type of flex PC on their customer side, right? So I think this is an industry that continues to pivot. And so far that their revenues in Taiwan and also overseas still continue to grow, and they are able to keep up with good, not high margin, but comfortable margin.
Okay, I think that's a great business strategy, high value and low carbon. I wanted to ask also a second follow-up, and that is the contact from Japan. The Japanese side heard about what was happening in Taiwan and became interested. Do you know if was there any kind of a public sector introduction going on, or was it purely inside industry? Hello? Hi. Am I offline? Can people hear me?
Yeah,
I think
I can hear you.
And
Okay, thank you.
don't worry. Okay, it's back.
Okay. So, yeah, Stephen, I wanted to ask if the public sector played any role in helping this industry collaboration happen between Taiwan and Japan.
Yeah, so sorry that I lost you for a minute. Yes, when we talk about semiconductor, there are some giant companies, right? And typically they do not require too much assistance from the government side. But when it comes to, for example, this PCB industry or the association, obviously their main support from Taiwan is to support research institute like ITRI, that in turn that we help them. Typically the government may not directly help all the industry sectors, but because in Taiwan we are unique that we have more than 20 research institutes like ITRI, although they are much smaller, but they focus on different sectors. So as I mentioned, that we actually help the PCB industry through working with the association for more than 15 years in the past. So we help them through digital transformation, and now we are helping them through this green transformation.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from the audience. Charlotte asked if you know what percentage of the copper is able to be recovered through this waste recovery technique.
Actually, I don't have the answer. I could dig it out later. Yeah.
Okay.
Currently,
we'll keep that on the table and see if we can find out. So Thank you very much, Stephen. I'll go ahead and present our example from Silicon Valley, which is a private sector initiative, if I could get the slides, about accelerating open innovation, meaning relationships between startup companies and large corporations that are happening between Japan and Silicon Valley. And the specific example is a project called Go Make 2022 with Mitsubishi Corporation, MCA, Mitsubishi Corporation of America. Let's go to the next slide, or I'll try it myself. I can do it. So this is a business partnership acceleration program, not just a business acceleration program for US startup companies and large Japanese corporations. The program lead is Mitsubishi Corp, and a consortium of Japanese companies in Silicon Valley and also a US climate tech incubator are playing key roles in this. It's 4 startups that are aiming at decarbonization of supply chains. It's a special focus where there are 4 areas that they're looking to attract startups into this acceleration program: supply chain management, packaging products and materials, alternative technologies, and the fourth is green fleet and battery management. So what they're hoping to get out of this is not just successful startup companies, but investment relationships between startups and large corporates, development partnerships such as proof of concept demonstrations or joint research and development, also commercial partnerships, licensing, sales, other kinds of joint ventures. The program has just been announced last month, and so they're currently accepting applications until August the 9th. And the acceleration period, once it starts, will be 6 months per cohort. So the partners involved in this, first of all, are the startups. How do you find them? So this involves contacts with venture capitalists, it involves incubator contacts, getting information from universities about spin-off companies that are emerging, and also through an open announcement. So the real lead for the project is Mitsubishi Corp, which is the US subsidiary of the giant Japanese trading and investment company. The whole purpose of Mitsubishi Corp, ever since it was founded in 1954, is to create new international business. And it's leveraging the strengths inside the Mitsubishi Group of over 1,900 companies worldwide in energy and digital technologies, and also contacts across multiple industry domains. So the specific office in Silicon Valley is also hosting this consortium of other Japanese companies called the M-Lab. The US incubator that's involved is Greentown Labs, which is the largest climate tech incubator in North America. They have been around for more than 11 years. The main bases for the incubator are in Massachusetts and also in Houston. And to date, they have supported over 450 climate tech startups. And they've also got a track record with this kind of Go Make program. And finally, the kind of key to Silicon Valley is this M-Lab Consortium. They were established in 2016. It's a membership-based platform for large corporates to experiment and systematize open innovation. The participating companies are going to leverage and complement their own overlapping business interests, their assets, and also their networks in Silicon Valley and Boston. You see the names of the companies in this consortium inside the circle in the graphic. And ultimately, these companies will work with the startup company to deliver industry-focused initiatives. So the kind of program works in a quite systematic way. It's open application until August, then there will be a 3-month selection period. Then the kickoff really starts in October. And at the end of the program, they're also planning a public showcase of what kind of partnerships come from this. Each startup company that participates will receive a corporate mentor who will help the company define objectives and milestones. Of course, everybody participates in seminars and workshops and networking opportunities, and also interactions and joint activities with the M-Lab companies. There will be education going on for the startup companies about how to work with large corporates, which is actually something that's quite important for this sort of program, for this sort of open innovation to be successful. The companies also receive desk space and membership in Greentown Labs during the program, and they also receive $25,000 of grant funding. This is not any kind of equity giveaway, it's really a grant funding. So I think that the things to note about this is that this is pretty much a private sector initiative. And as you see in more mature innovation ecosystems, the private sector can take on a larger and larger role. It will use multi-sector resources as necessary. The connections between Mitsubishi and also the M-Lab companies with local universities, not just Stanford, but Berkeley and also other universities in the Silicon Valley, will be useful in solving the human resources problem as well as in identifying new ideas, new startup companies to bring into this acceleration program. Also, the U.S. Commercial Service under the Department of Commerce in the United States has an office in San Jose that helps American businesses to learn how to export and do overseas business. You have to ask why Silicon Valley and what are the ecosystem contributions. There is a pro-innovation culture that's strong. The fact that there are strong knowledge centers about areas related to climate tech and decarbonization is important. As you may have heard, Stanford has just started its first new academic school on the level of School of Engineering or School of Medicine. There's a new School of Sustainability at Stanford. And also there's rich information flow within the industry sector and also across sectors. It's a good place to source startup companies, no matter where in the world the startup company is located. It's also a good place to conduct due diligence in new business areas. And finally, Silicon Valley is a very global place. There are rich connections to global markets. One of the data points that's not so well known is that 60% of technical workers in the Silicon Valley are people who are born in a foreign country. So this international collaboration is happening because the players really need to come together in order to reach the goals. If you're focused on supply chain as a startup company, you must develop large firm relationships early, really at proof of concept stage. But it's very difficult to do this with firms in Japan because of this kind of cultural difference in speed of decision making, and just the geographic problems of actually trying to work with somebody in Japan while you're here in the United States. Mitsubishi has already played a crucial role in making this happen by orchestrating all the partners and is continuing to be kind of the lead as the players start to participate more actively. And Greentown Labs, first of all, they are the experts in acceleration management. They also have incredible domain knowledge in climate tech, and they are systematizing the open innovation process between startup companies and large corporates. Finally, MLab is really the missing link, how to bridge the gap between US startups and Japanese companies. The Silicon Valley offices of large Japanese companies are quite forward looking and have a lot of experience working with startups and delivering new ideas. They are often essential in order to get some business going with Japan. And a startup can also explore working in a very time efficient way, can explore working with several different consortium members. So this is really what I have in my case study for this point. By November, we'll have more information on how many people have applied and the number accepted. I see a question. Yes, it is possible for any startup companies anywhere in the world to apply. It's easy to find this online. Just go to Go Make 2022 and put in MCA, and you'll get to the application page. And we'll start to really look at how the collaborations are proceeding at this point. I think it'll be at least a year before we can really start to even begin to talk about the impact. But looking at this over the long term, it could be a very interesting longitudinal study. And I want to thank Mr. Seiichiro Mukai from Mitsubishi Corporation of America for giving me comments on this example and a lot of information and help with my earlier drafts, and also the staff of MCA Silicon Valley and Greentown Labs. And of course, anything wrong with this presentation is mine. That's my responsibility. So that's what I have for today. I think that yes, the seats for the startups, they will have space in one of the Greentown Lab incubators, as well as having access to the MLab consortium companies, which have space here in Silicon Valley. So I think it's going to be rather distributed. The presence of Greentown does a lot to allay concerns by startup companies that maybe they would be just overwhelmed by some big company when they start to partner at an early stage. So having someone who's a well-known business accelerator on your side is certainly a major factor in balancing everyone's sense of what is win-win. So that's our 4 examples for today. Brent talked about hydrogen infrastructure at the Edmonton International Airport. Jana Krishna talked about a new kind of bio-based pilot plant in Thailand. Stephen talked about how the printed circuit board industry in Taiwan is going green and working closely with ITRI, the Industrial Technology Research Initiative, and how that's achieving international scale. And I have this international collaboration to talk about in Silicon Valley. We would be happy to receive questions from the audience. Please put them in chat and I will relay them to our speakers. And for now, what I'd like to, I'll start with trying to answer a question from Karen, that rich information flow is essential. However, too much information means a lot of noise too. So I think that what you are looking at is a combination of rich sources of information and the experts who can distinguish between something that's really significant, something that's high risk, something that is maybe not going to have the market potential of another idea. So it's the combination of the knowledge of the people to be involved to do the due diligence, as well as the actual availability of information itself. So, Stephen, you're mentioning about no incentives being given to companies that manufacture zero emission technologies, but there are service platforms given to SMEs which need help on assessing their own carbon footprint. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so far government has not come up. We just released our pathway to 2050 net zero at a very high level by end of March this year. And so far, I think that we have not formulated formal incentives from the government for manufacturing net zero or net zero manufacturing technology per se. However, that we do have set up platforms of teams from E3 and other professionals from the private sector to help SMEs for their carbon footprint assessment. I think that's the fundamental challenge that many SMEs have raised. And so for those platforms, government has set aside some subsidy for the helpers to help the SMEs, but so far not directly to the SMEs yet.
Okay, so I want to go around the table, as it were, and ask everybody in a topic on supply chains in the year 2022, we have to talk about the disruptions caused by COVID and the geopolitical situation. Brent, starting with you and going around to all of our speakers, what kind of impact has that had on the kind of orientation toward the 2030 goals? Do you think it's slowing it down, or are people using the opportunity to make changes in order to, achieve these goals as well as have more reliable supply chains?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's a universal answer to it, even for our own region. I think it depends on what sectors you're looking at in particular. So, we're an energy jurisdiction historically in Alberta, Canada, so producing a lot of oil and gas. Obviously, we've gone through the wave of virtually negative oil prices a couple of years ago to very high prices today, and I guess I'm turning this more into an energy conversation, but I think the interesting thing now is in the past years we probably would have worried that, well, now we're just going to get totally focused on opening up new access to new resources, new reserves of oil sands, for example. I think now, as you look at the net zero commitments that industry has and governments have for 2050, or in some cases now 2040, it's been a bit of a game changer. And I think what we'll need to see hopefully in the next few months is where some of these reinvestments are going to occur. So now we're seeing the energy sector make some massive investments, I think, now into the energy transition, the hydrogen economy, electrification, and so on. So, I'm not sure what that means for supply chains necessarily, but I do think it does mean, the ability to keep focused on those goals. I think we're still still moving in that direction. Yes, war in Ukraine and Russia is causing some major dislocations on short-term emissions, and obviously Europe's feeling that probably more than anywhere else. But I think we're still seeing some major investments in the future energy economy. So I think now the question though is, will the supply chain disruptions impact the ability to get there in a meaningful time frame? We've got some pretty serious goals for 2030, and that means some pretty serious investments have to start right away to start connecting our points of hydrogen production to hydrogen use. So I think the pressure is on governments to still be moving forward on that agenda.
Yeah, 2030 is a lot closer than it was a few years ago even. Thank you. Johnny Krishna, what about in Thailand? Has all of the kind of disruptions over the last few years set back the kind of goals for biomass energy or for improving kind of the greenness of supply chains?
Well, again, I think this is the sort of difficult question to answer based on current situations. But I think on many sectors, it's actually a newfound opportunities, and on certain sectors, it's definitely threat by it. For example, in Thailand during the COVID situations, at the very onset of it, we were having trouble with the alcohol supplies and all those kind of things, and that actually helped stepping up the development of the local alcohol productions in the countries. I mean, this is medical grade alcohol and things like that. So definitely that is an opportunity for that sector.
Okay. I see we just lost
Right.
Stephen for a minute or so, but from Silicon Valley, since I asked the question, I should probably try to answer it too. I think that it's interesting to see this new initiative starting this year about supply chain solutions that will help to decarbonize supply chains, and that the sense of urgency in regard to environmental factors is a lot more than it was. But this is something where the shock to the supply chains of COVID and the geopolitical situation have certainly been major factors in everyone's awareness of supply chains. Stephen, we lost you for a second. What about the situation with the PCB supply chain or other supply chains in Taiwan? Is the current situation going to push back the environmental goals?
Actually, the situation for Taiwan in terms of all kinds of manufacturing, it contributes to about 35% of the GDP, but almost 80% of the export value. And so that you could understand that from the manufacturing industry, the recent challenges have been to catch up with the Industry 4.0. That means smart automation. And with the COVID, with the Ukraine situation, that people would continue to accelerate the path for supply chain autonomy, right? Local autonomy. Mm-hmm. And now with the new challenges from net zero, I think that the challenges are daunting, but can be conquered by bigger companies, but more challenging for small and medium enterprises, which is almost more than 95% of Taiwan's manufacturing. So in the old days, only maybe 2 to 3 years ago, that you could have centralized manufacturing. And now, even with the TSMC, in the last 3 years, they have expanded to US and now getting to Japan and some invitation coming from Europe. So all said and done, I think that everybody would agreed that they need to participate in the 2050 net zero, and the challenge would be coming from 2026 CBAM already. But one thing I kept on advocating and also bring up the awareness is that while Taiwan does export manufacturing products to overseas, but we are, I don't want to use the word penalized, but we are not treated too equally in terms of sharing the carbon footprint burden. So for example, that we calculate that, I presented this before, for every unit of electricity used in going to chip production, it actually goes into some type of smart products that saves the energy about 4 times worldwide, but they are overseas with the brain companies. So as in the case with Roche, the burden would tend to go to the upstream manufacturer. But I think we all know that a good initiative, a strategy working towards 2050 net zero, it requires all kinds of ecosystem players, from the product design, from the users or the consumers' point of view, to do something differently, not just on the manufacturing side. So I think that the topic that we are talking about in a high-level forum with the ecosystem of supply chain, and that I use the eco chain as an acronym for the combination of the two, do deserve greater attention, calling for people from all walks of the ecosystem to work together. And only until we could do that, we could make better strides towards the 2050 net zero.
Okay, thank you. You raised an issue that I think is incredibly important, and where we all have to not rely on just either the industry sector or the public sector. There has to be more dialogue in regard to how you measure carbon footprint. Indeed, right now, people upstream wind up carrying a very heavy part of that load. And that's something that we need to keep talking about and raise awareness of. One of the things about international collaborations is that they always involve cultural differences. John and Krishna, your kind of lessons learned were really great in that regard, about, really establishing trust and making sure that you align expectations for the different parties involved and so forth. But what I'd like to ask each of our speakers to do is to think of a kind of specific cultural challenge. And this doesn't have to be between different countries. It could be, Stephen, the cultural difference between a research institute and very cost-conscious supplier of PCBs, right? Manufacturers of printed circuit boards. Think of something that is a cultural challenge, and how did your initiative, or how has your area overcome it? So, Brent, I'm going to start with you.
Sure, and maybe the one I'd highlight, it was a tough one to think about, a cultural challenge, but then I thought, there really probably is a bit of a cultural challenge between...
Especially when you get join involved and...
Exactly,
and
yeah,
so forth.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking, is the time frame of decision making may be a little bit different. We've seen the expression of interest, I guess, from Japan, for example, in moving the product, hydrogen, possibly as ammonia, to the Japanese market. And, that's a serious endeavor. That's, 10, 15, 20 years, of planning and infrastructure investments that are needed. So that's a little bit different sometimes than the time frame. We do operate in long time frames here as well when it comes to major infrastructure. But I think it's on a whole another level of magnitude, and it requires that degree of patience. It requires that collaboration early stage, build that relationship over multiple stages of planning. So I think that's maybe the one thing that we need to be a bit more accustomed to and aware of in North America, certainly in Canada, is, to begin to participate in these conversations earlier on. It's not going to result in a quick win necessarily in 6 months, even though I did highlight some ones that were fairly quick wins. But the bigger picture, let's say on the export infrastructure, that's going to require some major investments over a very long period of time. So we need to be aware of that different, maybe a cultural difference, or how we look at planning projects somewhat differently.
Okay, thank you. Johnny Krishna, what kind of surprises were there when you started working with the Belgians?
Well, many. Besides being Thai and Belgian, they are private sectors and we are governmental.
Okay.
And as COVID set in, we are not able to see each other, and working together face to face and body language is very important. Okay, and because of time zone, we on their side they will need to wake up early, and in our case we have to stay late when working together. So there are many little things that are accumulated into can easily accumulate into misunderstandings and things like that.
Now that's very true. The communications is more challenging, and when you can't physically be in the room with somebody, that's much more difficult. We're all still recovering from that one.
Right.
How did you overcome this?
Well, I guess openness helped a lot, and on many things we if we will try to match our promise, and if we can, we just tell them that we can't, and explain why, and with good reason.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes the things that we take for granted are the most important things to communicate to the other side, to let them know and why things are working the way they are. Stephen, what about in your situation?
Okay. Even I just talk about net zero emission from the manufacturing side. We do research about one very key important aspect is how to change the consumer behavior such that it will influence the brand product companies to change their products, right? How to design iPhone such that you could use for 2 years instead of just change once every year. But having said that, we just completed a major consumer study in Taiwan, polling people about top 20 behavior change. We collected global research in terms of what kind of consumer behavior changes will make major impact in terms of the carbon reduction, etc. But we use those 20 basically let people react upon it. And to our surprise, maybe not to some, the younger generation tends to be a bit less receptive to making those changes than the other generation. I'm talking about maybe 25 and below. All right. So I think that speaks to one type of even cultural difference within the same country, right? Not let alone cross border. And just a side story that I caught a glimpse of a National Geographic program last night talking about U.S. Voyagers. Originally designed for 4 years, but later on last for more than 40 years.
Yeah.
And when they look at Neptune, some of the conclusion could be that maybe they all had nuclear bombs and they kill each other, such that we could not see any signs of human beings. And when we talk about net zero, the end goal, I think that has no cultural differences. That the damage or the protection to the environment, I think, speaks no cultural differences. So I believe the 2050 net zero emission is a good topic for us to look back and see how we could solve each other's differences, whether it's cross-border, cross-generation, or cross-industry. So I do feel like working with each other in this type of ecosystem is a good exercise for us to have better collaboration, and more innovative solution will be needed to conquer these challenges.
I think you have made a very important point that because we're dealing with, the impact on climate and the need to try to reduce the impact of climate change, this is a worldwide problem, and that is something that we all share. And one reason why international collaboration is absolutely essential in looking at these kinds of issues. We all need to work on this as quickly as possible. It's not something you can develop somewhere and use old style international expansion from 100 years ago. Since I asked the question and I brought in one of the examples, I should talk a little bit about culture. Yes, as Brent mentioned, there's a difference in the time typically required to make a decision, especially when the people across the table are a large Japanese company, or in some ways, any large company at all, anywhere. Startup companies are on very tight schedules. They're trying to grow as rapidly as possible and increase the value of the company as rapidly as possible. That means they often cut corners in regard to business processes and in regard to other types of practices that large companies would really insist on. You also have the issue, especially when you're dealing in another culture, with understanding just who the decision makers are. How are decisions being made? Are you on track? How do you know whether you're being pushed over to the side or whether they just want to get information about your technology and they have no intention of cooperating? Developing ways to kind of understand the dynamics on the other side are absolutely critical. And this is why a location like a consortium here in Silicon Valley can be really valuable. You talk to other people in relatively non-threatening environments, not just the people who are involved in your particular project. And you kind of get a sense of, oh yes, this probably means that there's some people on board who are more conservative, other people who want to move further forward. How do you identify in my own relationship the people who need to be convinced? So this kind of thing happens in international scale collaboration a lot. We've had a really good session today. I want to thank our speakers for really interesting examples. We hope to hear more about these examples at the High Level Forum Summit in November in Tampere, Finland. And we also want to encourage our audience to send us examples that you have of interesting international collaborations in supply chains that are aimed at the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. I want to thank everybody in the audience for participating today, and we look forward to communicating again soon. Let me turn the microphone back over to High Level Forum at this point. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Tampere is a perfect innovation ecosystem as we define it within the High Level Forum community. It's a very dynamic region surrounding a very dynamic city where you can find all the key ingredients of innovative actors that compose a very strong innovation ecosystem based on a triple helix model.
HLF is a great opportunity to co-learn with the best innovators in the world, with the best co-organizational setups in research, education, in business. And here in Tampere we have a nice setup of small companies, startups, large industries, research and educational institutes who work together very closely. And we have the history of 240 years of growth. So this is a good example of innovation in a way. So we would like to offer the world to see what is a way to build a resilient society. We can expect discussions regarding how do we meet the challenges of 2030.
We expect many other innovation ecosystems visiting Tampere regions and participating in discussions, workshops and gallery sessions.
In this very extreme point in the world map, we can expect innovation for and innovation in extreme conditions.
Extreme conditions, extremely interesting discussion. Everything here will be extreme.
Innovation culture that is related to personal connections, not too much on governance structures.
And we will also welcome keynote speakers, distinguished guests, experts, and people from all different domains related to innovation.
Arctic conditions, not too much light in November.
Darkness, but light also.
Welcome to Tampere, November 2022.
I look forward to be here again and welcoming you all in the 11th HLF Forum Summit.
So this will conclude our program for today. Thanks again to everyone. Bye-bye.
Well,
Thanks. Bye-bye.
thank you, Richard.